Today we're going to make the best stuffed donut recipe. It is light and airy on the inside and perfectly crisp and crunchy on the outside, and then is rolled in just plain sugar for that extra crunch, and then stuffed with 4 types of filling. So you can put anything inside these donuts and they will be amazing. If you're enjoying this video, please hit subscribe below and then click the bell icon so you get notified every time I post a new and delicious recipe. Let's get into it. So, this is a different method maybe than you're used to for making yeasted donuts, but it makes a really nice light and rich dough. First step is we are going to start melting our butter and shortening. All right, so turn this on low. Let it slowly melt, right? We're not trying to, brown our butter or anything like that, although, yum. So we've got our butter, and that's melted. I'm gonna add some canola oil, so vegetable oil, so like no, we don't wanna add any flavors. You could use coconut or something like that. And I do if I'm making why am I gonna throw that away? Don't throw that away, Lindsay. And I do if I'm going to make like a coconut donut. It's actually phenomenal. And then we are going to add our milk. Okay, so you have to add it in this order, all right? There's a reason that I add this in this order, and it is because we're gonna add the eggs next, and you need to cool down that butter mixture before we add our eggs, right? Okay, so now we've got that in there, and it's cooled down, right? So we're gonna add our egg. Now I'm just gonna give us a little whisk in the bowl here first, so that I'm not trying to incorporate it all in there, and then I will dump it in. Yay! You don't want any stray bits of egg in here, right? This is a no streak zone. Okay, so next step is we're gonna heat this to about 106, 105, something warm enough to bloom our yeast, but not hot enough to, retard their development or kill them, although you'd have to boil them. I'm at 105, so I actually don't need to heat it any more. All right, so in our yeast dough, they're gonna be very happy to be in here. Just whisking them in. Just give them a good whisk. Set them off of the burner that you were using, and then we're gonna let them bloom. So we're just gonna let them kind of chillax and start to wake up. Waking up our yeast. So we are gonna do the very important step of whisking together our dry ingredients. So I've got AP flour here, I have sugar, and then salt. Whisk together, maybe choose a bigger bowl, I don't know. And now we wait. We're gonna let that bloom about 10 minutes. I'm gonna set my little timer here. And then we're gonna check back in. And we're back. It's been 10 minutes, and our yeast have chilled, and we are going to put them in the bowl of a stand mixer. Okay, so at the bottom, you wanna make sure you get all of them, all of the butter, everything. You don't wanna, nobody left behind, okay? All of these little guys are important. And now we're gonna put half of the flour in here. I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly half, it just has to be about half. I'm gonna start with my paddle attachment, as I often do with breads in this mixer, just because I find that they're not, those dough hooks are not super efficient. And, I don't have all day, you don't have all day, we want donuts. Ow! So, just go ahead and mix that in there. Don't stress about developing gluten or anything as you would for a cake, because that's the whole point. Awesome. Now we're gonna put the rest of our flour in there. I'm gonna keep the paddle attachment just to incorporate it. Essentially, we're just kind of doing the incorporation phase of making dough. So when you make yeasted dough, you have the incorporation phase where you incorporate all the ingredients, and then you have the development phase, which is where you develop the gluten. So we're just basically doing the incorporation phase with the paddle instead of the dough hook, because she and I are in a fight. Now this is, this is not a beginner's dough, okay? This dough is stickier. There's a higher ratio of wet ingredients to flour, and so it's not gonna be as easy to work with as, a drier dough would be with more flour. And then we are gonna put the dough hook on there, and we're gonna turn this up to like medium high, okay? We are developing now. We're in the development stage. So this is gonna take about 10 to 12 minutes, right? It's just how long it takes. Okay, so you can see see that the dough has started to it's pulling away from the sides. You can see it's kind of coming together more than it was before. It's not done yet, but this is looking really nice, right? So we are it's been about 5 minutes, and we are just gonna keep her going. Okay, so you can see that it stops pulling away from the sides, it's in the center. There's some things that are still stuck to the sides, but this is a sticky dough, and that is going to happen, right? If this were a drier dough, if there were more flour, then it would gather all of that and clean the sides of the bowl, but this dough is not gonna clean the sides of the bowl. So we are going to oil our bowl. You can use regular canola oil if you'd like. I'm just gonna spray. I'm just gonna give it a nice spray inside. I am also going to spray my bowl scraper to get that out, and my hands. Yes, spray thy hands. And then I'm gonna go ahead and scrape it down, and we'll go ahead and plop it in our bowl. Do you need to fold it and make it look nice in there? No, you don't. Do you know why? Because it has nothing to do with donuts. I am gonna give it one fold though, not for aesthetics, but because I wanna make sure that it's gotten all the gluten development it needs. Do you see how nice that's pulling on, like it's holding together like that? That is what you wanna see. We're just going to wrap this. There's a 2-step proofing process, right? We are going to bulk proof together in this for 30 minutes in the refrigerator. It is important that you do the bulk proof in the refrigerator because we did warm it, it's hot, and the yeast are gonna go cray. And we don't want them to have all their fun right now. We need them to have their fun in the fryer. The way that we're gonna do that is we're gonna cover this and we're gonna put it in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. You don't have to look for anything, it is just 30 minutes. I got you. So, it's been 30 minutes, great. And we are ready to roll this out. You can see that it is definitely doubled. It's looking nice, beautiful. We are going to first flour the top of your dough, great, and then flour generously your bench. You don't want to do a nice light dusting, like we don't want this to stick. Nothing is worse than a sticking donut, right? And then you're going to turn it out onto your surface. Before we cut, we're going to spray our parchment. I've got a piece of parchment here on top of my sheet pan. You definitely want to spray it. And then we're going to flour the top, okay? You know what I don't have? A rolling pin. Yes. Get yourself a rolling pin. Very important here, okay? And we're going to use a cutter that's about 3 inches. You can make them smaller, doesn't matter, but it will change your fry time, and that's fine. And part of what we're doing here is we're degassing it. You don't want to be aggressive with it. You want to be loving and gentle. And you want it to be about 1/2 inch high. Make sure she's nice and even. Okay. Take your cutter and go ahead and just start cutting. You should get about 13 baker's dozen out of this. So cut and transfer. Go ahead and make sure you dip that every time. This dough is obviously sticky. It didn't change when it was in the fridge. It is still sticky. You don't want to cut a bunch of them and leave them, they will re-stick, okay? Now, in order to get your 13, you're gonna need to re-roll your scraps, and you can re-roll these with ample bench rest. And what I mean by that is you kind of bring them back together, kind of knead them together, make sure that they're kind of cohesive, right? You want it to be a nice ball like that, and then you're gonna let this rest. You wanna like cover it with plastic wrap and just let it sit here for 20 minutes before you try and roll it out again. Otherwise, it is going to just kind of come back in. And that's fine. So that's how you get your total yield here. All right, so we are gonna wrap this, and you have 2 options here. You can allow these to proof a second time, to final proof at room temperature. It'll take about 30 minutes or so before you can fry them. Or you can proof them for 2 hours in the refrigerator. You'll just need to allow them to kind of sit at room temperature for about 6 minutes before you fry them. At this stage, wrap them really tightly. You can also proof them overnight. If you proof them overnight, you might not need to let them sit at room temperature for 6 minutes. You might just want to put them straight in the fryer. Like if they're like super puffy, just put them in the fryer. Okay, wrapping. And we're back. So these proofed about 2 hours in the refrigerator, and then I temped them about 10 minutes until you can see that they're nicely risen. And so while that happened, I heated my oil to 355 degrees. Oh, it's just falling just a touch right now, so I'm gonna let that kind of heat back up. I've got myself a half sheet pan here with a rack to let the oil drip, as well as a spider. You can use a slotted spoon or a perforated spoon. Just know that those are gonna hold a little bit more oil during the transfer. I've also got all of my fillings ready. So I've got peach preserves and Nutella. Yum! And I've got quick strawberry jam. You can find that recipe up there. And lastly, we've got a mixed berry jam, which I also have that recipe on here as well. So we've got all those options here, and then I'm just gonna dip them in sugar in kind of a traditional bomboloni fashion. Sorry, we've just crusted 350, and I'm gonna start putting my dough in there really gently. So I'm gonna pick it up, and then I'm gonna gently place it in there. You could use the spider to transfer the dough, but I find that that actually deflates it sometimes, and I'm gonna turn this down to low. If you wanna use 2 hands, you can use 2 hands. Don't drop it from really high, obviously. Now, adding cold dough is going to cool down your oil, or just dough in general, so we're gonna wanna make sure that that's not happening. Mine is perfectly fine, so I'm gonna turn it off. And I'm gonna place these in my refrigerator while these fry, just because they are super ready, and I don't want them to overproof while we're waiting. So they're gonna fry about 80 seconds on each side. It really depends on, you know, these are super light and airy. They did not come from the refrigerator, so they might fry a little faster. Oh, thank you, sir. They might fry a little faster than if they had come from the fridge. So I give them a flip, and then that way they fry evenly on both sides, and then I'll probably flip them one more time before they're done. When it starts to get a nice even golden brown like this, we will take our little spider here and we will test it with a cake tester. So I'm just gonna pop it in the center, and I'm gonna pull it out, and I'm gonna see that it has a little dough on it, and so I'm gonna keep frying. That is really the best way, especially with donuts that don't have a hole. If these had a hole, they would fry a lot faster. I'm gonna test them again, because it's not like it was like crazy. But so go ahead and pop it in the side, pull it out. Oh, it's clean, so we're done here. So go ahead and just put these, transfer these onto your rack. So if you put them directly in the sugar from the oil, then you'll just get oily sugar, and it will be gross. So just give them just a second here to let that oil drain, but they still need to be hot or the sugar will not adhere. So it's very important that you handle it that way. So I'm just gonna drop it, and if they're really, really hot, then you can kind of give them a little bath, if you will, like kind of toss the sugar all over them and then place them back. So, oof, that one's hot. I'm gonna look at my oil. My oil is still at 355, so I'm pretty stoked about that. And then I can just roll right into my next round. So, where there were some like divots in some of the bottoms? That's for my fingers. So they're so well proofed, especially from room temperature, that those were actually fingerprints. And you can't really do anything about that, but you just have to, they're not gonna taste any different. Okay, so I'm just gonna check and see if they're ready to be flipped, and by that I just mean that they are a nice golden brown, and they are. Oh, that one's got a fingerprint or two. Oops, try to be very, very gentle, but it's hard, right? All right, we are at 355, so I'm gonna turn that off. I'm just gonna give these like 15 seconds, 20 seconds to fry on this side, and then I'm gonna test them. All right, those are done. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and just pull those out. So we've got our donuts here, and they are ready to be filled. I'm gonna fill them, they're still obviously hot, so I'm gonna fill them while they're warm. I'm just gonna grab a piece of parchment to place on my counter so that I don't get filling everywhere. So I cut a tip that's like, it's like the size of my pinky. Well, not quite, it's a little smaller than that. You wanna make sure you don't cut too big of a hole, otherwise it's all gonna come out. The peach one, you wanna make sure that you have a big enough hole that the peaches can come out, or you're just gonna get peach juice in there. And then what we're gonna do is, you don't have to, you could just jam that right in there, but I find it a little bit more delicate to use. You can use tweezers, you can use a chopstick, really anything that's like, you know, about the same size. So let's go ahead and, without further ado, go ahead and get a hole started. I'm gonna poke a hole in all of them so that we don't have to do this like a million times. Okay. Oof. All right. Let's start with Nutella, shall we? All right. So I'm just gonna take that. I'm gonna put the tip in the center, and then I'm gonna squeeze. Now you want to make sure that you get enough filling in there. You don't want a light Nutella filling. Literally no one wants that. I'm gonna do one more Nutella. It's my favorite. Let's do a little mixed berry action. Wow! Go ahead and get that in there. Squeeze. This is obviously gonna come out a lot easier. So if the filling is coming out after you pull out your piping bag, that means that you put enough in there, and congratulations. Yes, that is a good sign. Uh-huh. Go ahead and get some peach in there. Oh dear. Yep. Bam. All right. They're filled. Do you know what that means? They're ready to eat. Yes. It's time to try, and I'm so excited. Which one am I gonna try? I think I'm gonna, whoa. Okay, we got a little strawberry situation happening over here. Oh dear. I'm gonna put her on top of her friend. Let's see. I think I'm gonna do a mixed berry. Yes, I think I am. Oh man, I'm so excited. Oh, do you see all of that filling? Yes. Oh my goodness gracious. And that perfectly fried dough on the outside. Oh my goodness gracious. It's light and airy on the inside. You get all that jam in every single bite. It's crispy on the outside with that like light dusting of sugar, which makes it a little extra crunchy too. Divine.